He saw Jeremy dangling there on the side of the cliff. He reached down and tried to grab onto him when he saw it. A hand. A dark hand was gripping around Jeremy's ankle, keeping him upright but holding him back. He wasn't stuck on a ledge. They were fighting a tug of war for Jeremy.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like birds.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring. I am so excited for today's episode.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Oh my gosh, what a great time of year.
You know, I was thinking, have we been in a park over Halloween?
I don't think so.
Well,
yes.
We went to Shenandoah, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was cool.
The KOA we were staying in, was it a KOA?
It was a Jellystone.
That's right. It was a Jellystone. They had trick-or-treating around all the RVs. It was
serious.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's so serious. People come, they set up a few days in advance or whatever, and they have like a whole judging competition, and people bring whole houses worth of decorations for their RV.
To their campsite.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that was a surprise. We had Halloween costumes for the kids. Mm-hmm. We took them around trick-or-treating. I remember one of the stops, one of the RVs had Jell-O shots for the adults. That was pretty funny.
Oh my gosh.
And there was one where they had, like a hand popped out of the ground and scared our kids. And it was pretty awesome. That was in Luray, Virginia.
Luray.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right outside of Shenandoah. So looking for a fun Halloween getaway. That was a surprise.
Yes. The kids had a blast.
And the weather was perfect in Shenandoah at that time of year. The colors were gorgeous. We got out, we could do all the hiking and stuff, and it was just leaves crunching under our feet.
Well, I was about to mention the ambiance of all of the trees, the leaves falling and everything. It's the perfect creepy. And
it did not feel creepy in Shenandoah. It was so delightful.
Yeah.
So what a fun Halloween getaway. We're not talking about Shenandoah today, though.
Nope, not
We're
at all.
talking about haunted national parks. This is volume 3.
Yes.
So if you like this episode, be sure to go back and listen to volumes 1 and 2 that we've done over the past couple of years. This has kind of been somewhat of a Halloween tradition for us, talking about the haunted places in the national parks.
Exactly. It's kind of a series that has been building one episode upon another. And this year, I truly have prepared properly because the boys and I have been watching The X-Files recently. And for the younger listeners, if you don't know, The X-Files is a TV show that started in the early 90s. And it ran for about 10 years, but it was an absolute staple of 90s American culture. It was just so good. Ash watched it a little bit, but not as much as I did when I was growing up.
My parents really liked it, and because of that, and I was a teenager or preteen, I had to not watch it.
And she totally missed out. Oh my gosh. It's so good. But we're watching only the alien episodes, in case you're wondering, because some of the monster and the other episodes can be a little too frightening for, I think, the age of my children. But the alien episodes is so good. Anyways, for those who don't know, the show follows 2 FBI agents, Agents Mulder and Scully, as they investigate a series of unsolved cases. A collection of unsolved cases labeled the X-Files. The X-Files are kind of the FBI's equivalent of a junk drawer. If something happens or an incident or a case doesn't fit easily into existing categories, or they just don't know what to do with it, they just kind of toss it into the X-Files to get rid of it. Well, pretty soon, the X-Files became a dumping ground for all kinds of unexplained phenomena. Think Bigfoot sightings, alien abductions, UFOs, ghost stories, all kinds of supernatural and paranormal events that happened to people, were witnessed by people, and might even be being covered up and hidden from you by the government. Those were the X-Files. Now, I have a conspiracy theory that may or may not implicate you.
I love conspiracy theories. Yay.
But have you ever been part of a conspiracy theory or a conspiracy, Ash?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But who knows?
Okay, the conspiracy theory that I have that may or may not implicate you, you'll have to react to. Now, I'm not saying that the National Park Service was established to cover up supernatural and paranormal incidents. However, I think it's interesting that our government has set up a small army of rangers with jurisdiction all around the country who, air quotes, protect all kinds of natural resources. And when you visit these areas under National Park Service jurisdiction, you have to follow their rules, stay on their roads, hike on their trails, and even get permits to visit certain areas. It's the perfect illusion of access. Be helpful without being helpful. Grant access without granting access. It might be why, like, some NPS websites have all kinds of information, but none of it is actually helpful. Perhaps all of those helpful rangers guiding you around the park, telling you where to go, what to do, and sharing tidbits of information are really there to simply ensure you see what they want you to see.
That's funny.
What do you think about that, Ash?
You know, I can see where you're coming from. I can see it. I can't confirm
or deny. You have plausible deniability? Is that what you're about to say?
I will say that I got progressively less helpful as a ranger as the season went on. This is the 50 billionth time I've answered where the bathroom is. You know, that type of thing.
Right.
But, you know, here's what's interesting about working as a park ranger, because there is an element of that where it's like there are places in every park that we never tell people about.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of my coworkers were some of my favorite people because they were out exploring the park in like weird places and places that I didn't even know there were trails. I didn't know there was anything there because it's not on the park map and it's not something that you can easily find or find out about. So I will say there is an element of that. I had a favorite coworker. His name was Dave in Grand Teton. And every week he would go explore something else that was not on the map, as not anything. And he'd come back from his weekend and I'd be like, Dave, where'd you go? And he'll tell me, I found this really cool trail here or whatever. And I would go do those trails my next weekend.
Nice. Nice.
So there is an element of that for sure.
Were there ever any people dressed up in National Park Service gear doing things maybe a little out of the ordinary, or working in areas that I wonder what they're doing that you didn't know about that you probably should have?
No. When I was in Glacier Bay, I tracked the rangers who were out doing research and stuff. That was my job.
In case the CIA is listening right now, Ash gave the correct answer. You heard it from her, right from her. No, she did not see you working in Grand Teton. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay, well, of course, all of this is just a setup for today's episode. You know, the supernatural and the paranormal are just fiction. It's not like the federal government has recently declassified thousands of files that have to do with UFOs or anything, some of which document events and sightings that happened in and around national park sites.
I am a firm believer in aliens. I am also a firm believer in Bigfoot.
Yes.
So this is right. This is perfect.
Oh, it's going to be great. By the way, all of that I just mentioned totally just happened.
I know. That's why I was giggling.
And if you go, there's actually a government website. It's aaro.mil, which stands for the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And they've broadened out the term from UFO to unidentified anomalous phenomena. You can see some videos of some crazy stuff on there.
We saw some crazy stuff in Nevada this summer.
Yes. Yes, we did.
So, there you go.
Anyways, I guess my point is, if some of this stuff might be real, what else might be real? In the first Haunted episode, Volume 1, we focused on why reports of unexplained, mysterious things happening shouldn't be immediately disbelieved, because the witnesses are often respected, well-known individuals in the community that you would normally believe. Sometimes there's multiple witnesses who don't know each other who are all reporting seeing the same thing. Sometimes the witness is a family member. It gets a lot harder to disbelieve when you consider the source. In the second Haunted Parks episode, we shared some stories about a subject that people generally already believe in: spirits. Some good, some bad, some nice, some not. In today's episode, we're going to step beyond the realm where most people are willing to let their curiosity actually take them. Most people, including myself, can have fun discussing the unexplained, but I hold back my actual belief. I keep it close to my chest and the topic at arm's length so that my actual belief isn't actually on the line.
And so people don't think you're a weirdo?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? In layman's terms?
Yes.
So people don't think you're crazy?
Yes. And I think a lot of people do that because they don't want to seem crazy. And the ramifications of believing some of these things can actually be kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
But today, maybe today, just for a few minutes, let's open ourselves up and allow curiosity to challenge the assumptions that we have about our true reality. Because in today's episode, we're sharing stories of supernatural and paranormal events in the national parks. Now, the terms supernatural and paranormal are often used synonymously, but there are some interesting differences and some fun middle ground too. Paranormal generally refers to things that are outside current scientific understanding, but could possibly be explained by future scientific discoveries. Supernatural is used to describe things that are forever outside the natural laws and human understanding in science. The fun comes when you have to decide whether or not you think something is supernatural or paranormal. Because, generally speaking, everything supernatural is paranormal, but not everything paranormal is supernatural. So as we go through the episode today, you will have to decide whether you think science can adequately explain what's in these stories, or we'll have to accept that maybe, just maybe, our reality is bigger and more fantastic than what science can measure, observe, or explain. So for today's episode, I'm simply asking that you suspend your disbelief and give your curiosity a chance as I share some stories that I wrote that are based on real accounts.
All right.
Our first destination will shortly be revealed. Whitney loves her job, and she's great at it. She's been in hospitality for years, but she has never been as excited about doing her job as she is today. She started out her career cleaning rooms at a Motel 6, then advanced through various promotions to work at the front desk, and later in the back office. Once she was in the office, she realized that she had a skill set, and if she played her cards right, that skill set could take her almost anywhere. So she went home that night and made a spreadsheet of all the places she wanted to see before she died, made a second column of all the places that spoke English, made a third column of all the places she already knew and loved, and then made a fourth column of her favorite hobbies and activities. Then, in a way that only spreadsheet lovers will understand, took that information and created a list of 30 places in priority order that reflected who she was and what she wanted out of life. To her surprise, her list included only 5 major cities, and they were significantly further down the list than she expected. Her list, upon further contemplation, made total sense, but it initially surprised her. It was, for the most part, a list of national parks. Mountain parks. And it made total sense to her because she loved to hike. She loved wide open spaces and she loved people. So after reviewing her spreadsheet, it became clear that she was going to pursue a career in hospitality in the national parks. So she got online, did some research, and found some companies that ran the lodges and hotels at the national parks. Before long, she was cleaning rooms again, but this time at the Old Faithful Inn in Yellowstone. Then she was working the front desk at the Many Glacier Lodge in Glacier, and she spent a few years there working her way back into management. Then earlier this year, a management position became available at her number one priority. So with fingers crossed, she submitted her resume, went through several rounds of interviews, and to her great satisfaction, was offered the position working in the El Tovar Hotel on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Considered by many the crown jewel of the national park lodges, El Tovar feels like a mixture between a Swiss chalet and a Norwegian villa perched right on a cliff overlooking the most famous canyon in the world. Whitney felt like she had finally made it. She picked up and moved from Montana into employee housing at the Grand Canyon, and she's loved every minute of the last 3 months that she has worked there. Sometimes she thinks she ought to just pinch herself because she can't believe she gets to take her breaks sitting on the rim of the Grand Canyon, a tiny speck of a person sitting on the edge of one of the great wonders of the natural world. And she loves her job too. She gets to meet people from all over the world, hike whenever she wants, and manage one of the great historic hotels in all of the United States. But she had never been as excited to go into work as she was today. Today she gets to decorate the Christmas tree in the lobby of El Tovar for the first time. She's been putting up Christmas decorations around the hotel for days, but she's been saving the tree for last, the final and most important piece to truly welcome in the holiday season. She took over from the night manager a little before checkout at 11. She reviewed the occupancy, handed out assignments, ran a midday meeting, ate a quick lunch, and basically skipped her way to the storage room to bring out boxes of decorations for the tree that the night manager had already set up. El Tovar was designed to have a grand Christmas tree. Through the main lobby and just off the main desk, there is a grand open space that, when not filled with a Christmas tree, really has no purpose. The carpet even outlines that there ought to be something there, and the empty space extends to the second floor, with railings built around the circular empty space so that visitors can admire the tree from the second level too. So the Christmas tree is a big deal, and Whitney was beyond excited to decorate it. Plus, being the manager, she often gets to interact with the customers in really fun ways, like inviting them to hang up ornaments and decorate the tree with her. It was early afternoon when things started to get curious. A young couple, who had obviously been hiking all day, dragged themselves through the lobby to the front desk. Whitney could hear the check-in process from over by the tree and was glad to hear her employee engage in small talk while quickly and efficiently checking them in. The process was over in less than 4 minutes, and they quickly accepted Whitney's offer to hang an ornament or two. After placing their ornaments as high as they could reach, Whitney thanked them and wished them a Merry Christmas. They returned the Merry Christmas. Then, as they walked away, the girl turned and said, "By the way, we loved the employee in period attire. It was such a great touch. Have a good one." To which all Whitney seemed to have time for was, "You too," as her words chased the woman down the hall. Puzzled, Whitney thought for a second, looked at her employee, who was at the front desk, and asked, "Who is wearing period attire?" But the only answer she got was a shrug because her attention was directed at a group of people ready to check in as well. The comment was quickly forgotten because the train had just arrived from Williams. Knowing what was about to happen, Whitney ran over to the array of stanchions, and quickly connected them one to another with the retractable belts so that the mass of people about to arrive would know where to go and would form an orderly line. Whitney, however, never had to join her employee at the front desk and help check people in. The people from the train filtered slowly through the front door, and not in one giant mass like they usually do. 15 to 20 groups checked in and put ornaments on the tree, a myriad of Merry Christmases and Happy Holidays back and forth and all around. The hotel was filling up, and all Whitney had to do was exactly what she wanted to do: decorate the tree. The last group from the train was a family with 3 young children. The kids were so excited to be able to put something on the tree. Whitney had reserved the bottom branches and the least fragile ornaments for children. They helped the 3 children place the ornaments securely, then stood back to admire their work. Whitney gave the 2 girls high fives, and then, after she gave the little boy his high five, the mom pointed out how much they appreciated the special attention the man out front gave their kids. Then, accidentally, Whitney said what she always said when somebody complimented a member of her staff. "Of course, it's our pleasure. We're just happy you're here." Even though she had no idea what the lady was talking about, and now that she had said it, there was no inquiring what she meant. Although Whitney did go out the front door and took a quick look around after the family had gone to their room, but she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. There was nobody dressed up like Santa Claus and nobody on her staff out there welcoming guests. The sun was setting, though, so she took a moment to look around and appreciate the beauty of the Grand Canyon. It was pretty cold, though, and the clouds looked like they were about to drop some snow, so she pulled her jacket around her, stole one last glance at the canyon, and went back inside. Once she got back inside, the girl at the front desk called her over. She was talking to a guest who was inquiring about the holiday party that would be taking place that evening. But the girl didn't know anything about a holiday party, so she asked Whitney if she knew anything about it. Whitney, just like her employee, was unaware of any holiday party and asked, "Who told you there was a holiday party this evening?" To which the older gentleman replied, "Well, the gentleman out front that welcomed us into the hotel. He said there was going to be a holiday party tonight. He just forgot to tell us what time and in what room." Being used to smoothing over misunderstandings and miscommunications, Whitney put on her most sincere face and responded, "Oh, he must have been referring to the restaurant. It's decorated so festively that it feels like a party in there. Plus, we have a special holiday menu in the restaurant, and those limited time only entrees are incredible. So we're not having an actual party. Sorry for the misunderstanding." Then she slipped the customer a 10% off coupon, which the customer took graciously, slightly disappointed but graciously, and walked away. It was at this point that Dana, the girl working at the front desk, curiously asked Whitney, "Are the park rangers doing something special for Christmas? Are they dressing up as Teddy Roosevelt or something?" To which Whitney replied, "I don't think so, but it does seem like somebody in Grand Canyon Village is talking to the guests before they get here." As they both shrugged in agreement, Mark, one of the bellhops, walked out of the back office. He stood right next to Whitney, pulled out his phone, showed it to her, and said, "What is this a picture of?" The picture was a picture of a painting. It was obviously a painting somewhere in the hotel. She recognized the furniture, the wallpaper, and the type of picture frame, but the painting didn't seem to be of anything. It was just kind of black and brown, like a dark wall or something. "A dark wall?" Whitney said. "That's what I thought," Mark said. "I was taking some luggage up to the Fred Harvey suite, and I saw this picture and thought you might want to replace it." "Yeah, I think you're right. We can do better than that," said Whitney. And then Mark ran off to take a bag of ice to one of the rooms. And Whitney walked into her office in the back and wrote a note to herself to replace the blackish picture in the Fred Harvey suite. Then, hoping to spot a park ranger dressed up as Teddy Roosevelt, she grabbed her coat and walked out front just in time to welcome a large group of people picking up their luggage from the tour bus driver about ready to check in. So she held the door for a few of them, then rushed to the front desk to help Dana. As usual, the group hit all at once, clogging up the main lobby for a while. But as the line died down, people were more forthcoming with information about themselves, casual small talk. And Whitney even invited a few people to hang some ornaments on the tree. The last couple that came through didn't mind having to wait at all. When Dana thanked them for their patience, the husband's response got both Dana and Whitney's attention. He said, "Oh, well, we wanted to come in last so that we could spend more time with the gentleman out front. He was so kind to talk to us for a while. He told us about the building and the restaurants he runs for the railroad. He even took a few pictures of us in front of the building, and we got a selfie with him." The selfie got the attention of both Dana and Whitney, and they both interrupted the man at the same time to ask if they could see it. Slightly surprised at their enthusiasm to see his selfie, the man happily agreed, and so he pulled out his phone and pointed the screen so that the women could see as he swiped past a few pictures of him and his wife, and finally got to the selfie, which elicited an, "Ah, David," because the picture was just a bright, whitish gray blob. "You must have had the flash on again, or put your finger in front of it. Oh well, he was so nice, he's probably gone now." And since they already had their keys and were fully checked in, she pulled him along to go to their room, and Whitney and Dana were left disappointed and mystified still. But in hospitality, you can't dwell on one thing too long, because as soon as they had left, the phone rang. It was the Fred Harvey suite. They needed a few more towels, and since Mark was out, Whitney told them that she would be right up. So she grabbed an armful of towels from the back, walked past the Christmas tree, up the stairs, around the railing, making sure to admire her work on the Christmas tree as she went, and headed straight down the hall towards the Fred Harvey suite. When she knocked on the door, it was the older gentleman that had inquired about the holiday party earlier. He gladly took the towels, thanked her for coming, and was about to close the door when Whitney asked if there was anything else she could do for him. He held the door for a moment, then opened it back up. "Can you help me with the thermostat? I can't seem to get it right. It's just a little warm in here." To which Whitney happily responded that she would be happy to help. But as she walked into the room, her eyes were drawn to the picture hanging on the wall. It was obviously the painting Mark had pulled up on his phone earlier. The furniture was in the same location, the picture frame and the wallpaper matched, and disconcerted as she was there to help the gentleman with his thermostat. So she made her way to the far side of the room, adjusted the temperature down a little bit, and then made her way back to the picture. But before she could inquire about the picture, the older gentleman spoke. "That's the man that told me about the holiday party when we arrived. Fred Harvey. Or at least that's what my wife says. Whoever it was looked just like him." But that's not what concerned Whitney, and gave her the shocking pit in her stomach. What gave Whitney the eerie feeling in her stomach was that the picture painted on the foreground of the black brownish wall was a man that wasn't there before. Fred Harvey, an older gentleman wearing an early 1900s black suit with 3 to 4 buttons leading up to a bow tie. He had brown hair and a thick graying beard. She quickly glanced around the room looking for other paintings on the walls. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe this wasn't the picture Mark showed her. But it was the only one. She couldn't help herself. It probably wasn't great customer service, but she had to ask, "Did you move this picture, or did you replace it with something else?" Her tone was way more accusatory than she meant it to be. She tried to fix it with a follow-up question, "Or did one of my employees come in and switch it for you?" To which the older gentleman simply replied, "No, we haven't touched it. Everything is the same as when we arrived." "Oh, okay. Is there anything else I can do for you?" But the conversation had soured. "No, thank you very much for the towels and for fixing the thermostat." And he stood holding the door open, which Whitney had no choice but to exit out of. And before she could say Merry Christmas for the final time, the door was closed behind her. She stood there for a moment, unsure of what to think. Then, with her mind seemingly set on a course of action, she walked towards the stairs. Without so much as a glance at the Christmas tree, she ran down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. When she reached the bottom, she ran to the front desk, grabbed the walkie-talkie used to communicate with Mark, and asked him to come back to the main desk immediately. Then, looking at Dana, but having no idea what to say, her eyes focused suddenly beyond Dana and out into the lobby. The sun had gone down by now, and at this point in the evening it was so dark that you couldn't see beyond the outside deck. But standing on the deck outside, a man facing away from the hotel, he was wearing a black suit, and without a word to Dana, Whitney rushed around the counter, sprinted through the lobby and through the front doors. But when she got there, the only thing she found was the cold winter air. The wind had picked up, and it was starting to snow. She wasn't dressed for it, but the confusion kept her from going back in and explaining herself. When she did go back in, she walked slowly, eyes towards the ground, not looking at or speaking to anybody. When she did finally round the front desk, Mark came out from the back room. "Hey, Whitney, what's up?" She looked up at him, hoping to mirror the casual attitude with which he had just addressed her. She coughed. "Can you show me that picture that you took earlier of that painting in the Fred Harvey suite?" "Sure." He pulled out his phone, swiped left a couple of times, paused, then said, "This is the picture I took, but..." And he showed it to her. Staring back at all three of them, because Dana had come over to see too, was Fred Harvey. Tall, old-timey black suit, bow tie, graying beard, just as she had seen him moments before. But before any of them could speak, a middle-aged woman came up to the desk and said, "Excuse me, that nice man in the hallway just told me about the holiday party. Can you tell me where to go?" The question just kind of hung in the air. Nobody answered, and nobody knew what to say. Mark, who recognized the awkward silence before the others, simply stuttered, "He doesn't work here, and there's no party." Which prompted the woman to walk away, a bit put out. Which left Whitney, Dana, and Mark to sit uncomfortably in the silence as they looked at the picture on Mark's phone. The picture of Fred Harvey.
Ooh.
There are a ton of reports from hotel staff that see Fred Harvey.
So what did he do?
So Fred Harvey, if you go to Petrified Forest and a couple other places kind of along Route 66 and kind of the Southern Railroad, he managed and set up basically the country's first hotel and restaurant chain.
Okay.
And so he
along
hired
the railroad.
Yeah, he hired tons of women from all around the country to come and staff all of his restaurants and his hotels and things like that. He kind of designed El Tovar, but he died before it was officially open.
Okay.
Which may be why.
He still haunts the halls.
Exactly. But he doesn't seem to be an angry ghost.
He's a jolly ghost.
He's a happy, helpful ghost that maybe causes a few customer service issues because he keeps telling people about holiday parties. But that conversation about a person coming in and asking about a holiday party, that's like verbatim that an employee had with someone that looked like Fred Harvey. And so that is where he like came in asking where the holiday party was.
Interesting.
And so, paranormal or supernatural, Ash? What do you think?
I don't know.
Hard to put a pin on that, right? Or hard to label it properly. Because if you watch Ghostbusters or like the History Channel or the Discovery Channel, when they do like ghost hunters, they seem to think that you can scientifically understand ghosts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like they always say it's paranormal.
Yeah.
In those shows, right?
So, anyhow, anybody listening to that story can judge for themselves, supernatural or paranormal.
And you should go stay in El Tovar.
Yes.
Because it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a really cool hotel.
It's so pretty. It's right on, you can't have a better location. And it's probably one of the nicest lodges in the whole national park system to actually stay in and have your experience be like luxurious.
Yes. And the price tag will match that. So
yes.
Keep that in mind too.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Ready for our next destination, Ash?
Ready.
For our next destination, we are heading to what I think is one of the loneliest places in the lower 48. Big Bend National Park.
Mm-hmm.
Damien and Anthony Green are a father and son duo that share a love of photography. But Anthony recently graduated from high school, so they decided to take a father-son trip across the Southwest before Anthony heads off for his freshman year of college. Their goal was to capture sunrise and sunset pictures in as many different iconic locations as possible. Being from Southern California, they started at Joshua Tree National Park, headed east, spent some time in the Utah parks, then headed south, through Arizona hitting the Grand Canyon, Sedona, Saguaro. Turning east, they hit White Sands until ultimately nearing the far point in their journey at Big Bend National Park in Texas. This wasn't a hiking trip at all. In fact, by the time they reached Big Bend, they hardly had any real dirt in their shoes. They had limited time, so after a sunset, they would often drive in the dark to get to their hotel for the next sunrise location. Then they'd wake up early for the sunrise, get back in the car, and then hit the next sunset location, often getting the most sleep in the afternoons. The schedule was horrible, but they were only doing it for about a week and a half, so neither of them complained. Plus, to both of them, this final hurrah was worth the discomfort. Damien still couldn't believe Anthony was moving out all on his own, so he made sure he and his son were eating well too. If steak was on the menu, they got one. They also got a few t-shirts, a mug, and whatever else Damien thought Anthony might need for his dorm room. But Damien wasn't really that excited to be going to Big Bend. It's not that he wasn't excited about the national park, he was. It was more what Big Bend represented. As the far point in the journey, reaching Big Bend meant that he and his son were no longer headed out on an adventure, and everything from that point on was coming back from their adventure. And then Anthony wouldn't be living at home anymore. So, Big Bend loomed pretty large in Damien's mind, but he did his best not to spoil the vibe of the trip. He let Anthony choose all the snacks, most of the music, and got him a brand new camera for the trip. Anthony spent hours experimenting while they drove. He would even get distracted and immersed reading the manual and trying new settings, at which point Damien realized he could covertly switch the music to something more his style. The trip was going great. Everybody was happy, tired, but happy. The weather was great, the vehicle was working perfectly, and they were able to hold to their schedule almost exactly that they had mapped out at home on the kitchen table. Something they didn't expect was how lonely Big Bend would feel. They had visited a bunch of other national parks during this trip, though despite the crazy hot temperatures, other places had lots of crowds. It was August, but it was still peak season, I guess. But Big Bend seemed to be the exception. After leaving Alpine, Texas, they felt like there were only a few people on the road. And when they reached the actual border of the national park, they counted how many cars they saw during the last hour of their drive to Rio Grande Village. And they only saw 2. And both were heading out of the park. Anthony said it was a sign that they should follow suit, but they journeyed onwards. They made it to Rio Grande Village, which was completely empty. They walked the nature trail to the top of the butte where they planned to photograph the sunset. And they waited. Nobody ever came. It was absolutely gorgeous. The sun drifted down below the horizon. The Chisos Mountains off in the distance dominated the horizon. The desert rocks revealed their true colors in the dimming light, oranges and reds and yellows, mixed with the green of the river below and the purple of the sky above. The sky was completely free of clouds, which wasn't always great for photography, but somehow it worked out this evening. The sunset and their pictures of the sunset were incredible, and they had it all to themselves. Both of them recognized that everything from here on out was the return journey, so they lingered much longer than they normally would up on top of the butte, just talking about anything, really. Girls, school, career, girls again, sports, all the fun they would have when Anthony came home for the holidays, where they would go for their next father-son trip, whether they would bring mom and his siblings, which steak was the best so far, whether or not Damien still had enough riz to get a waitress's number, how Anthony had better hope he has half of his father's riz. There was no hint of sunset in the sky by the time they decided to leave, and they actually stayed a bit longer at that point to try some nighttime photography, because there was no moon in the sky either. The stars were so bright, it seemed like they could see their own place in the Milky Way galaxy. They knew it was time to leave when the bugs started to swarm, though. They pulled out their flashlights and headed back down the trail. They could hear and sometimes see the bats swooping down around them, catching moths and mosquitoes. It was pretty cool. It got a little eerie when the coyotes started to howl in the distance. But overall, it was really serene. Crickets down by the river, coyotes in the distance, a few birds here and there, a slight rustle in the leaves as summer breeze blew through the trees. It was actually really loud when they reached the boardwalk that went over the marshy section of the trail. The frogs were so loud, you couldn't even hear your own footsteps. And then, for no reason at all at once, everything stopped. The birds, the coyotes, the frogs, the bugs and the bats, the crickets, even the breeze, everything came to a stop, including Damien and Anthony. Shocked by the sudden absence of sound, they both stopped in their tracks. Damien even turned off his flashlight. He somehow felt out of place, almost like a sitting duck. Anthony quickly followed suit, and there they stood silently on the boardwalk, both of them breathing intentionally soft and slow so that they didn't make a sound. But their hearts were steadily pumping faster and harder to the point that they could hear their pulse beating in their ears. The moment seemed to drag on. Why was this happening? Anthony was the first to break the silence. "Dad, what's going on? Should we just run for it?" But Damien didn't respond right away. His eyes had adjusted fairly well, and he was looking all around them to see if he could see anything in the darkness. He was especially concerned about something in the water. So he kept his eyes as wide as he could, hoping that his pupils would absorb and make use of whatever light the stars were dropping on the objects around them. As Anthony took a breath to speak again, Damien saw something in the water. Something moved on the water, and Damien quickly moved to get a better look. This was the signal to Anthony to keep quiet, as he knew his dad was up to something. Damien tried to stay cautious in his efforts to get a better look. So, as guarded as he could manage, he peered into the dark pool beside the boardwalk. The only sound, the slight grinding of dirt under his shoes, and the pounding of blood in his ears. And as he looked into the water, he saw that it wasn't something in the water that caught his eye. It was something reflecting off the water. And so he looked up into the sky, and that's when he saw them. 2, sometimes 3 at a time, and at one point even 4, lights darting around the sky. They were the brightness and speed of shooting stars, but they never disappeared, and they didn't go in just one direction. They would streak one direction, stop, and go another direction. Then they would come together, pause, then fly apart from one another. Sometimes it was as if they were playing a game. They would chase each other around the sky. Anthony eventually caught on, and Damien knew exactly when, too, because Anthony let out an involuntary, "What in the world?" And then they both just stood there, mouth wide open, heads back as far as they could go, watching the dancing lights play across the sky for several minutes. Neither of them speaking, neither of them knew what to say. They had no explanation for what they were seeing. Well, that's not true. They both had an explanation in their mind, but neither of them were willing to be the first one to mention it. But both of them had independently wondered how far they were from Roswell, New Mexico. Finally, a mosquito forced them to break the silence. One flew into Anthony's open mouth, causing him to cough and spit, which was gross enough sounding to break the trance that Damien was in, because the bugs and the creatures were still silent as the grave. But Damien still kept one eye on the sky, and he was glad he did, because Damien realized that he wasn't the only one who heard Anthony cough. The lights seemed to react to the break in the silence. They came together, and for the first time, Damien could tell that the lights were not hundreds of miles away, as he had originally thought. They were much closer, far too close, because for the first time, they dropped below the line of the horizon. He could see the lights between him and the Mexican mountains off in the distance, and they dropped almost immediately as Anthony began to cough. And as his coughing fit continued, they didn't just split into 3 or 4. They split into 7 or 8 different lights, all equidistant apart, swishing back and forth across the landscape, so that by the time Anthony had recovered, Damien knew what they were doing. They were combing the landscape. So Damien looked at his son and in one word passed the message along. Run! Both of them set off at a sprint. Within seconds, they were off the boardwalk. Luckily, their eyes had adjusted to the point where they could see fairly well without their flashlights, and the trail was pretty wide and devoid of rocks. The trail wasn't that long in the first place, and since there was nobody at the campground, they were able to park right at the trailhead. Neither of them fell or had any major mishaps, but they did have to feel their way along the last part of the trail since it was covered in taller trees and bushes. But eventually they made it to the car. They quietly opened the doors, quietly shut them, and in the sanctuary of their own vehicle, they finally felt safe to whisper, "What are those things? Are they really after us? Is it safe to turn the car on? Won't they just find us once they turn the headlights on?" Both of them peppering the other with thoughts and responses as fast as they could manage. But their questions were answered for them, and their course of action became clear as something shot through the windshield and exited the driver's side window. Neither window shattered, but just enough glass bounced around the cab to cause them to wince in pain as they suffered several small cuts. But the sound that it made was beyond anything they could have anticipated. Not the sound of whatever it was breaking through the windows, but the impact it made just outside the car as it pummeled into the ground through some bushes. Damien's fight or flight response kicked in as he started up the car, slammed it into gear, and forced his right foot pedal to the floor. The headlights came on automatically and they were cruising through the campground at speeds way too fast for the corners. "Are they shooting at us? Can the Rangers help us?" Anthony kept firing off questions at Damien, but Damien didn't have any answers and he needed to focus on driving. "I don't know," he shouted. "All we can do is get to the highway and hope we can outrun them." He had never been so glad he opted for the V6 in his Chevy Equinox. They made it through the campground. Damien had never been so zoned in as he was right now. Anthony could feel the intensity and did his best to be moral support. "You're doing great, Dad. You're doing great. Keep it up. Keep it up." To which Damien responded, "Anthony, I got this. Where are the lights? Can you see the lights? Keep an eye on the lights." At hearing this, Anthony realized he could do more than just cheer on his dad. He peered through the window, leaned in to look through the windshield, and basically made the rounds through the whole car. "I can't see him. I can't see him. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Did we lose him? I don't know. Keep looking." They made it to the highway. Damien turned left as he headed towards Panther Junction. He felt some relief as they got up to higher speeds. 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 75, 90, 95. As he held it at that speed, the last thing he wanted to do was lose control and roll the SUV. Anthony still hadn't spotted the light. The wind was so loud as it blew through the holes in the windshield and the driver's side window, the physical reminder that they were somehow and for some reason under attack. They could see the lights of the smallish tunnel up ahead. Damien wondered if they should stop and take shelter inside. But they were going so fast, and that they were there before he had a chance to think it through. They cruised in and out of the tunnel and were on the far side when the headlights unexpectedly turned off. Then all of the lights on the inside of the vehicle turned off, and they could hear the engine putter to a stop. "What? Why? No, 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 no!" They both shouted at the car as the vehicle slowed down. As the car came to a stop, so did their protests. They looked at each other. The area around the SUV started to get slightly brighter. Damien shouted instructions, "Get out and run for that tunnel." Both of them jumped out of the car and ran back down the road towards the tunnel, but they didn't get very far before one of the lights dropped down to about eye level between them and the tunnel in the distance. The light advanced closer to them, It was like they were suddenly unable to move. The light seemed to get brighter. Their muscles all seemed to flex, but without any control of their own, everything started to hurt until the light darkened, flew up and over their head, and they fell to the ground, exhausted. Anthony fell on his side so that he could see as the light flew over the SUV, hovered over it for a moment, illuminated it with a bright light for a few seconds, and then flew up into the sky. Damien had rolled over next to Anthony at this point, and they both watched as the light broke into 6 or 7 others, flew out towards the Chisos Mountains, circled the mountains once or twice, and then one by one flew straight up into the sky, where they disappeared from view and never came back. As the last light disappeared, the SUV engine started back up and the headlights turned back on. Damien never put it in park, so it started to roll down the highway. They both got up quickly, ran towards their open doors, and jumped in. Damien got control of the car just before it started to drift off towards the shoulder. They turned the car around and took shelter in the tunnel until morning. When the sun came up the next day, neither of them pulled out their cameras. That sunrise and that morning was just for them. After the first cars started to appear on the road, they decided it was safe to start driving. Anthony couldn't believe they didn't get any pictures of what happened, but Damien said it was probably good that they didn't. Maybe that was what they were looking for. Anyways, they stopped in at the ranger station and told the rangers what happened. The rangers were nice. They looked at the broken windows and took a full report, but they didn't have any answers. The younger ranger had never heard of anything like that. The older ranger just told them to keep driving north until you reach the I-10. Stick to the busier and bigger roads on your way home. Advice they gladly followed. And during their 12-hour drive, they didn't stop for anything but gas and McDonald's until they reached Phoenix, where they made sure to check into the hotel, eat a quick steak, and get all their gear into the hotel room before the sun went down. The end.
That I believe.
Right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's very X-Files-y, right? But people have reported their own property damage and livestock being killed by what they call hot rocks falling from the sky, which could, be little meteorites or something like that, but it keeps happening. And people have reported, they call the area a zone of silence because airplanes, vehicles, radios, and things like that, for no reason at all, will stop working around Big Bend.
That place is the loneliest place. It's crazy. You drive until you're not near anything, and then you drive some more.
Right.
I love that park. That park is amazing.
It's
but
so
I could
cool.
totally see that happening there.
Oh, man. It's amazing. But yeah, I think kind of how people think of Devil's Tower as like a landmark for aliens, I could totally see the Chisos Mountains acting like that because they are pretty dominating in the skyline.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're right. So you're at the bottom of Texas. It's West Texas. So there's already not a lot of inhabitants. And then you have Mexico on the other side of the river, but not busy Mexico, rural Mexico.
Very rural.
So it is just a very lonely, quiet, far removed place.
But people report seeing lights flickering across the sky like that.
Well, you also have the Marfa lights, which are another paranormal thing that happens in this area too. So if you want more info about stories in that area, go read about the Marfa lights too, because that's pretty cool.
Marfa, Marfa lights.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Very cool.
Okay, for our last story, we're heading to Acadia National Park.
This is in Maine.
Yes.
For those of you who want to know.
Yes, exactly. I really don't want to do this, Peter cried. I would much rather go trick-or-treating. I even did the research. Last year I wrote down which houses gave full-size candy bars. If I don't go this year, it will all have been a waste. No, Tina said. We're too old for that now. Now we're doing things that are really exciting, especially now that Lara's new boyfriend has a car. Plus, we're almost there. Stop your whining. Lara, age 15, and Taylor, her new boyfriend, stayed at the car, while Peter, age 13, Tina, age 15, Jeremy, age 15, and Jessica, age 14, went on a quest. Jeremy was on the internet the other day and found a story about an abandoned cave that is only accessible at low tide. He heard that the NPS is trying to hide it from people. They took it off the map, removed all signage that lead to it, and he doesn't have any proof, but Jeremy believes the NPS changed its name and is actively hiding its history because too many unexplained things keep happening there. Jeremy decided to chime in on the conversation. Listen, we're not even going to do anything dangerous, okay? Low tide started 10 minutes ago. That's when the cave is safe and accessible. But we're not even going down to the cave. We're just going to lower Jessica's cell phone down into the cave to see if we can record anything unusual happening. Look, Peter, we'll be there in 5 minutes. We'll stay for 30 minutes, and then we'll take off. Try not to be a baby, okay? I'm not being a baby, Peter protested. I just think this is stupid. We know, but if you didn't want to come, you should have just stayed with Mom, Jessica replied. I'm 13 years old. I'm not going to trick-or-treat with my mom. It'd be so embarrassing. Okay, so let's just have some fun, and then we'll be done, okay? Jessica said, trying to smooth things over between her brother and her friends. The next several minutes were a conversation mainly between Jessica, Jeremy, and Tina, who were all giving their opinion on how lame it was that Lara decided to stay in the car with her new boyfriend, Taylor. They can make out anytime. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Tina exclaimed. Halloween night, low tide, at the Devil's Oven. I'm going to write all of this down. If we get something on the recording, guaranteed, they'll make a movie of it one day, and we'll all be famous. What are we trying to get on the recording anyway? Anything, really. It's supposed to be a portal to the underworld, right? So ideally we'd get something like fire, maybe some blood, screaming or chanting. But really, for our first time recording, I'd be happy with anything besides waves crashing on rocks. This answer didn't seem to comfort Peter at all. He got really quiet. So Jeremy, not wanting Peter to derail their plans, tried to say something reassuring. Listen, I was over in this area not 2 weeks ago with my dad on our lobster boat. It was just like tonight, low tide, and we didn't see anything out of the ordinary, which was a total lie. In fact, it was the exact opposite. 2 weeks ago, he was on his dad's lobster boat at low tide and thought he saw and heard something weird from the sea cave. That's why he was looking up information on it on the internet in the first place. But his comment seemed to do its job. Peter started walking quickly again. He still didn't really say anything, but nobody was complaining about that. After a few minutes of walking, they arrived at their destination. The muffled sound of the ocean suddenly became crisp and clear as they emerged from the trees. Jeremy knew exactly where to go since he had come here on a scouting mission a couple of days before. It was a bit trickier in the dark, but nothing they couldn't handle. They had all agreed that once they were out of the trees, they would only speak in whispers, and would use a flashlight only in emergencies. So the four of them tiptoed their way through the rocks and down to what Jeremy was calling the crow's nest. But it was really just the roof of the cave. The plan was simple, and having seen a lot of horror movies, they were trying to avoid all the stupid decisions that put people in danger. They had two simple rules: stay out of harm's way, and nobody does anything alone. So their plan was to simply sit on the roof of the cave, use a rope to lower Jessica's phone over the edge and into the entrance of the cave, and then try to record anything cool that might happen. This way, they never entered the cave, they never got close to the ocean, and they stayed together. In their minds, what more could you ask for? You couldn't ask for a quest to be handled in a more responsible manner. After a few minutes of helping each other across the rocks, they arrived at the crow's nest. They pulled out their backpacks and sat down on the rocks and unloaded their gear. Peter brought some blankets, Jessica brought some snacks, Tina brought the sodas, and Jeremy pulled out the rope along with the phone holder that he had designed specifically for tonight. The mission started immediately. Jessica pulled out her phone, started the recording, and handed it to Jeremy, who lowered it carefully over the edge. After lowering it about 15 feet, he peered over the edge to see how far he still had to go. But instead of tying up the rope or lowering it a bit further, he surprised everyone by pulling the phone back up. "What are you doing?" Tina whispered. "I saw a light," Jeremy exclaimed as he put his finger over his mouth. As he finished reeling the phone in, he quickly grabbed it out of its pouch and ended the recording. Waited for the recording to process, then quickly pushed the play button as soon as the option was available. All four of them huddled together around the phone as they looked intently at the screen. They watched as the video showed the phone being put in the pouch, lowered over the edge, rocks, and all the screen picked up was a dark orange glow. No details, just an unfocused fog of dark orange. "What is that?" "I don't know," Jeremy said, gleaming with excitement. Jessica had her hands over both sides of her face, gripping an expression of shock and disbelief. The only one who didn't seem happy was Peter. "Let's get out of here," he whispered. "No way," Jeremy spat as he readied the phone for its second recording and quickly started lowering it back down. This time he watched it as he lowered it, giving it a little bit more rope this time around. He could still see the light coming out of the cave, but he left the phone down there this time, giving it time to hopefully catch something good. All of them sat there, almost too anxious to think. None of them could believe that something might actually come of this. They just wanted to do something fun for Halloween. After 4 minutes, which felt like an hour, Jeremy pulled the phone back up. He stopped the recording, waited for the recording to finish processing, and then finally pushed play as soon as the option was available. They all watched themselves on the screen as Jeremy put the phone in the pouch. Then they watched themselves fall away as the phone descended down over the edge. Rocks, 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 and then once again, a dark, unfocused fog of dark orange. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, until finally, rocks, rocks, and themselves again, and the recording ended. Tina was visibly frustrated, and she pulled the camera out of Jeremy's hands. She turned the volume on full blast and put it next to her ear as she played the recording again. 4 minutes later, she confessed that she heard nothing. "Dang it," Jeremy hissed, frustrated, but still trying to be quiet. "Okay, listen, I prepared for this. I know we are trying to be smart, but the tide is coming in and I have to see what's happening in there." "No!" exclaimed Peter. "No, it's not worth it. We have no idea what that could be. It could be dangerous. You said you hoped it was a portal to the underworld. Is that really something you want to go see and get closer to?" There was silence in the group for a minute. Jessica seemed to come to her senses and sided with her younger brother. "He's probably right." But Tina jumped right in. "Let's at least find out his plan." And before anyone could object, Jeremy pulled out another, heavier rope. "I'm going to tie this around my waist. It's long enough for me to walk around and go down there. And if I get in trouble, you can just pull me out. But odds are I'll be back in 2 minutes. Peter couldn't believe his ears. "Are you serious?" But before Peter could make his case, Jeremy grabbed one end of the rope and started walking away. Jeremy, come back!" Peter exclaimed, but neither Jessica or Tina backed him up. They were both too curious, and the plan seemed reasonable enough. The three of them sat on the edge of the cliff, letting out the rope to Jeremy as he descended and made his way to the entrance of the cave. As soon as he got to the ground floor of the cave, something changed and everybody knew it. The orange light was now visible as it shined out onto the waves as they came crashing closer and closer to the cave. They started to notice a rumble in their ears and a vibration through the rocks, but none of the other things shook them as much as the look on Jeremy's face. His face was a mixture of fear and excitement. Initially, he paused, unsure of what to do next, but after a moment of contemplating, he continued moving closer to the mouth of the cave. Peter was livid. What is he doing? He's going to get himself killed. I just know it. But what Peter failed to notice, because he was too busy freaking out, was that with every step, Jeremy got closer to the entrance of the cave. The light grew brighter, and with every step, the rumbling grew stronger. And quickly it became clear that the rumbling was actually drumming. Deep, heavy drumming. Dum, 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 dum. And it became clearer with every step that Jeremy took. Tina was captivated by the whole spectacle. Jessica looked worried but didn't do anything. Peter had enough. Jessica, we have to pull him up before it's too late. Jessica, help me. Peter grabbed her. I'm not strong enough on my own. And as he put the rope in her hands, she came to herself. Tina, on the other hand, seemed to be in a haze, her eyes unblinking. Peter had to break the whisper rule as he shouted at her, Tina, this is scary. Tina, Jeremy is going to get himself killed. Help me. Jessica joined in by pulling her away from the cliff's edge so that she couldn't see anything that was happening. Separated from the view, she started to come to herself. Peter ran to the cliff's edge to see where Jeremy was. He was already past the entrance of the cave, and he couldn't see him anymore. He's already gone in. We have to pull him out. Ready? Let's go. And the three of them yanked on the rope. All that they got this time was all the slack that was in the rope, but Jessica, who had come out of the fog, had a great idea. Let's wrap the rope around this rock and use it as an anchor. Every time we heave, we'll wrap the rope around the rock so that we don't lose any ground. Everybody agreed. Peter shouted the orders, 1, 2, 3, heave! The load was much heavier this time. They could feel Jeremy struggling. Peter just hoped he didn't untie the rope. 1, 2, 3, heave! They wrapped the rope around the rock. 1, 2, 3, heave! 1, 2, 3, heave! They kept wrapping the rope around the rock every time they got enough. Jessica's idea was working perfectly. On the third wrap, the weight got heavier, but the fight seemed to lessen. Peter ran to the edge. He could see Jeremy. They had taken him off of his feet, and he looked unconscious. He looks knocked out. We've got to get him out of there. 1, 2, 3, heave! 1, 2, 3, heave! They wrapped the rope around the rock. A few more wraps and they'd have him back. 1, 2, 3, heave! Wrapped around the rock. 1, 2, 3, heave! But they kind of got stuck. They couldn't get the rope around the rock. We must have already hit the ceiling. He's bound to be bumping on the rocks. Tina told Peter, you go and see if you can grab him and help him over the ledge. We'll keep pulling. So Peter ran to the edge. He saw Jeremy dangling there on the side of the cliff. He reached down and tried to grab onto him when he saw it. A hand. A dark hand was gripping around Jeremy's ankle, keeping him upright but holding him back. He wasn't stuck on a ledge. They were fighting a tug of war for Jeremy. They've got him! Peter yelled. Keep pulling! Don't stop! Keep pulling! But the rope didn't budge. Jeremy didn't budge. Not towards them anyways. The only change was that Jeremy looked to be getting stretched, and the rope looked like it might shift, and who knows what might happen if the rope changed position. They might lose him altogether. Keep pulling! But their strength seemed to be giving way, and they were actually losing. The girls stumbled and lost a couple of feet. Jeremy dropped down. Peter had to adjust his grip. They lost another couple of feet. Jeremy was almost out of sight again. His body hanging there, he looked as if he was just asleep. At least what Peter could still see of him. With every passing second, he was slipping away, until finally, Jeremy was gone. All Peter could see was the rope. But what Peter didn't notice throughout the whole ordeal was that the tide was coming in. And as the rope went completely tight, and they relied wholly on the rock that was the anchor, a wave splashed and for the first time entered the cave. And as it did, the orange light dimmed just a little, and the rumbling drums took on a slightly muffled sound. And then Peter knew their only chance was the ocean. If they can keep a grip on Jeremy, the ocean will take care of the rest. But he didn't have time to explain it. Here's our chance, don't give up. 1, 2, 3, heave! And with that heave, another wave came crashing into the cave. 1, 2, 3, heave! And another wave. The light getting dimmer with each new wave. The drums got softer. They kept pulling. They could feel themselves getting him back, inch by inch, until their big break came. A large, rogue wave, bigger and out of nowhere, slammed through the shore and into the cave, and immediately, whatever it was that had hold of Jeremy let go. And Peter watched as Jeremy swung out from the interior of the cave, and the drums and the lights went out all at once. "We've got him! Pull him in! We've got him! Pull him in!" And now that they weren't fighting against some unknown force, the work seemed pretty easy. Several heaves later, and Jeremy was back in the crow's nest. He was still unconscious, but at least he was back. Suddenly a loud voice rang across the shoreline. It scared them at first, but upon closer inspection it was just Laura and her new boyfriend Taylor. They were sick of waiting and wanted to go home. Without sharing any of the details, they explained that Jeremy was hurt and needed their help. They were actually glad that Taylor was there. He was older and pretty strong, and that came in handy getting Jeremy back to the car. "I thought you guys were going to stay out of harm's way," Laura yelled at them as they drove towards the hospital, but nobody had any fight in them, and nobody would tell them what happened. Right before they got to the hospital, Jeremy came to. "Ouch! My ankle!" he yelled. "He's okay?" Taylor yelled from the front seat. Everybody in the car was so happy. Maybe they weren't going to be grounded forever, and maybe he was all right. They rushed him into the hospital. They told the people at the ER that he hurt his ankle. They all went into the exam room together, and as soon as the nurse left, they all pounced on him. "What happened? What did you see? What was it that had you?" But Jeremy knew this was coming. "Quiet, listen." And with an embarrassed look on his face, he confessed, "I know what you guys are hoping for, but I never really saw anything. I only remember ever seeing that bright orange light, and that's it. I took a few steps past the entrance of the cave, and then everything went black until I woke up in your car." "Oh, maybe we knocked him out when we were pulling on the rope," Tina said in an accusing tone, and it wasn't until that moment that Peter realized that the girls didn't see what he saw. They only ever saw the orange light. They were back by the rock the whole time pulling on the rope. "Oh my gosh, did we knock you out? Does your head hurt? Are you okay?" Jessica cried, suddenly worried it was all her fault. "No, I think I'm okay," Jeremy said. Then Tina, with the look of somebody that had just been conned, pointed her finger at Peter and hissed, "You never wanted to come on our little adventure in the first place. Was this all just your way to get us out of there quicker so you could go trick-or-treating and get your hoard of king-sized candy bars? Jeremy could have really been hurt." Surprised and offended that he now had to defend himself, Peter argued back, No, I didn't make it all up. If it wasn't for me, who knows what would have happened? I saw the hand pulling on Jeremy's leg. I saw him unconscious hanging there. I fought for you, Jeremy. I can't believe you think I made this up." And at that moment, the doctor knocked on the door and everybody stopped fighting immediately. "I hope everything's okay. I'm Dr. Wilson. Let's see, Jeremy, I hear you hurt your ankle." And with that, he walked into the room and took a seat on the stool by the hospital bed. Everybody else kind of scattered to the sides of the room like boxers being told by the referee to go to their separate corners. "Let's take a look at that ankle. What do you say?" Jeremy lifted his foot into the hands of the doctor. "I'm going to take your shoe off, okay?" He carefully untied Jeremy's shoe, slid it off his foot. "Let's get a look at your foot now. I'm going to take off your sock." "Okay." Jeremy winced as the doctor attempted to slide the sock down his leg. But the sock didn't slide off as easily as the shoe had. In fact, it didn't slide at all. It seemed as if the sock was sticking to his leg. With a bit more effort, it came off okay, but it was more like pulling off a Band-Aid. Slowly, and with as much care as he could, the doctor peeled the sock off of Jeremy's leg and foot, revealing what looked like a terrible sunburn in the shape of a giant hand. Dun dun dun. Oh man. The Devil's Oven is a cave that was renamed Anemone Cave.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know about that cave. And I know that they've been trying to keep people away from it.
They have. And they've even removed a lot of the signage.
I didn't know it was called the Devil's Oven. I've heard Anemone Cave, though.
Yeah.
That's why, if you want to be like Jeremy and go see it, that's probably what you'll find it under.
Exactly. But the history of that cave is kind of creepy. And a lot of people have died in that cave, or at least been injured. Ropes snap for seemingly no reason when people are exploring it. And it's said to have been the site of ancient heathen rituals. Because people would basically use it to burn people alive and things like that.
Interesting. Long time ago.
Long time ago. So, supernatural, probably, is what I'm thinking. You never know. You never know. Things can portals to the underworld. I'm all about that.
I knew, though, they've been trying to keep people away from there because I like trying to find spots like that in the parks, or sometimes I have friends who work in the parks who know spots like that. So I knew about that one, but we've never been because I don't want to.
You don't want to get sucked in?
Yeah. I don't want anything bad to happen. So.
Oh, man. So anyways, low tide is the only time that cave is accessible. And it's probably pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
For normal reasons, not just supernatural reasons.
Yeah. That's
so
pretty cool.
So anyways, those are our 3 stories, folks. And maybe you can allow yourself to believe in the paranormal, the supernatural, just for a night as we're coming on closer to Halloween. So.
Yeah. Thanks, John. You're a great storyteller. I love hearing your stories. For those of you out there that love the podcast and want to say thanks to John for all the time he spent on those, leave us a 5-star review. Leave a comment with it. We'll read it. We love getting those. Thank you so much. And we hope that you're able to find all the full-size candy bars on Halloween night.